Most parents don't realize it, but your baby's umbilical cord could hold the key to major medical breakthroughs in future. In this video, I talk about why stem cell banking is not just a nice to have, it is potentially life-saving. So in a previous video, I engaged with a local company in South Africa called NetCells, and I spoke to Sister Bronwyn Rousseau about the process and the storage of stem cell banking. But in this video, I want to talk about the why. Why is stem cell banking so important? Why should we even talk about it? And why are more and more parents considering banking stem cells for their babies? If you haven't watched the first video yet, I suggest you start here. But in short, stem cell banking is when babies are born, they take a little bit of cord blood and a piece of cord tissue, so a piece of the umbilical cord. They store it for 10 to 20, sometimes even longer years, and many years down the line, those cells can be used to regenerate into different cells with different functions. And this leads me to the very first point that I want to talk about, why stem cells are so exceptionally powerful. And it is because of this ability of the stem cells to become so many different things with so many different functions. And the very special thing about this is that it is not tainted by someone who's lived a life. So as you can imagine, the way we are sitting right here, your body and the cells in your body are a certain number of years old, and whatever your lifestyle was would influence the cells in your body. A baby is brand new. So those cells are the least tainted cells that you will ever find. So they are the most ideal cells to use if you want to develop cures in future to replace cells that are no longer functioning like normal. It's basically like having a medical safety net that grows with your child. So now the question is, what can stem cells be used for? Well, there are a number of causes that Sister Bronwyn shared with us. And I'm going to insert the clip right here where she talks about these different uses. And then I'll also share with you the real life applications where stem cell therapy has been applied and what the outcomes were. So this is what Sister Bronwyn shared with me.
Okay, so I'm going to just talk on those units that we have released, okay, to illustrate your question. So we have released units to treat cerebral palsy, 2 of those, and they were for little bodies that managed to get into a clinical trial at the Duke University in the United States. And the 2 units were their own stem cells, which were transfused. And the feedback that we get from mums a couple of years down the line is the little one who started to walk, after the stem cell therapy, started to articulate, say words. Just a generally calmer, happier child, okay? And then another unit we used to transfuse a sibling, and the older child had thalassemia. Okay, thalassemia is a disease of the bone marrow where the blood cells are abnormal, so the body destroys them. So these little people need blood transfusions all the time. And the sibling's blood, cord blood, was a match to the brother, and he then got a transplant of his little brother's stem cells. And he is recovering now from his thalassemia.
Wow.
Because he's got a new bone marrow. So those are the kind of diseases we know that stem cell therapy works for. Up in Africa, sickle cell disease is very, very common. And they do stem cell therapy a lot there. But it would be a donor match sample, because remember, it is of genetic origin. The other therapies where stem cells are used from a cord blood perspective are help to support symptom of disorders or diseases such as autism. The little one is baffled with certain processes in life, reading, understanding, concentrating, and so on. And there is some proof that stem cell therapy is improving on those symptoms. Children or adults even that have a brain injury from a lack of oxygen, whether it was an oxygen starvation during labor and delivery, where the child gets a cerebral palsy, for instance, or a traumatic brain injury, stem cell therapy is now being used to support the treatment or the symptom thereof. So the uses of stem cells there are helping for these little ones to speak better. They're able to articulate better, they're able to move better. The children before a transplant weren't able to walk, and now they're starting to walk. They're starting to talk.
That's incredible.
So yes, it's not a miracle, it's not a cure, it's not going to take away the problem, but we know that the benefit of regenerative stem cells is going to improve quality of life for little people or adults that are battling with these things.
So as you can see, the possibilities are growing every year. But the promise of these possibilities are cures to diseases that we don't know how to cure today. So timing of stem cell banking is really important. It's usually not a last minute decision. You have to plan for it. It does have financial implications, as you have to figure out a plan how you are going to pay for storage for the next 10 or 20 years, whichever plan you take. But you miss this opportunity when your baby is born, you don't get that opportunity again. And you might think that, okay, if I have another child, I would bank that child's cord cells. Maybe that can help this one. So fair enough. What about siblings? And even more so, what about identical twins? You might be thinking, perhaps I can save a little bit of money by only doing the one child, and that one becomes the backup for another. Well, let's see what Sister Bronwyn has to say about identical twins and banking their cord blood.
Okay, so first prize is to bank for both babies. For two reasons. One, sometimes we don't really know that the babies are identical, and they might not be. They might be fraternal twins, and then their DNA profiles could be different. Alright, so if we are able to store for both babies, we do recommend that. But if we're absolutely sure that they are identical twins, then we can store the cord blood for one little one. I do need to say this, is that when twins are born, they're generally littler than full-term single babies, and they tend to come a little early. And that is one challenge that we do find sometimes with stem cell banking, is because the little ones are born prematurely and they're smaller, the volume in the cord could be less. And they also, because they're little and they're prem, they benefit from the delayed cord clamping, which you will hear all about. So sometimes we do find ourselves in a catch-22 there.
Sure.
So even then is another reason to try and store for both, because then you've got double the volume.
Alright, so we've made a pretty good case to bank cord blood if you have identical twins. But now, what about siblings? If you have banked the first one's blood, or you haven't, and now you have a second or a third child, and you think, okay, can they be backup for their siblings? Is it possible? Well, the beauty is they can, and the difference between finding a match for a sibling versus finding a match in the world of random people out there is significant.
So that is where they need what they call an allogenic donor. It's a sibling donor, or a donor from the random population. But remember, to get a matching donor in the random population of donors, the odds are 1 in 100,000.
Sure.
Okay. We've got a sibling donor, 1 in 4.
Wow.
25%.
Yes, much higher.
So that's again, why do I want to store stem cells? For that eventuality that you hope never happens.
So you have a 25% chance of finding a matching donor if you need it from one of your siblings. But having your own cord blood, or your child having their cord blood available to themselves, that's a 100% match. The takeaway here is that banking blood for every child is your best way to preserve cells that might help them in future. But now there's a downside as well, because babies who have congenital or genetic disorders, they cannot use their own cord blood cells because it is in their genetics. So whatever is causing the abnormality is in their DNA. So by giving them cord blood, you're not replacing their faulty DNA with normal DNA. You're replacing it with the same abnormality. So they need donors from outside. It could be a sibling, it could be someone from the population out there. The other thing is, if you collected too little cord blood, so you need about 60 mils of cord blood in order for it to be stored. As Sister Bronwyn mentioned, with twins who are normally born premature, this is sometimes a complication that they encounter. If it's less than 60 mils, it is not worth storing because they can't do much with that if you should need it. But it doesn't mean all hope is lost. Remember, they store cord blood and they store cord tissue. So even if you can't use the cord blood, they can still use the cord tissue that they've collected. It's about a 15 centimeter piece of cord that they cut, that they can still use. So even though you don't get a redo to get everything, you can still get the cord tissue, even if the cord blood is not enough. You might have a question about delayed cord clamping, and in a previous video we did cover it, but delayed cord clamping is possible if you want to collect stem cells. Up to a minute after birth is the typical time interval that is allowed for delayed cord clamping, and as long as the doctor or the midwife doesn't milk the cord, it can still be collected and used for stem cell banking. In terms of home birth, it is also possible to collect stem cells. Here's what Sister Bronwyn has to say.
So delivering the babies in the water might be difficult because we're worrying about contaminating the sample.
That is true.
Okay. But if the baby's born in the bath or in the pool, we can get mommy out of the bath before the placenta is born and do a collection.
Okay. The placenta and the cord will otherwise just be thrown away. Now that what is seen as medical waste can become life-saving in future. And the plus about stem cell banking is that there are no side effects to this procedure. Not for mom, not for the baby. No one gets an injection, no one gets any cuts, nothing. So a question that I often encountered as well, what if it is a waste of time? It is so much money, and regardless of payment plans over 1 or 2 or even 3 years, which makes it a lot more affordable than what you might anticipate, am I really going to be able to do something with that in future? Is it a risk worth taking? Let's find out.
I think to approach that kind of question is that, if we look at the population of young people or families having children, the majority of those children, those families are well and healthy. And everything goes well, and kiddies grow up, they have their vaccines, they have every now and then a childhood disease, and life goes on. Okay? And they don't become a statistic. But there is that 1 in 70,000 odd people that may develop a life-threatening bone marrow cancer. And we as a family have an opportunity to store stem cells that could potentially treat that bone marrow disease.
We can never know for sure if you and me, even more so our children, are not going to be that one person in 70,000 that might develop this cancer. And then you have to hope for 1 in 100,000 people to match as a donor to save their life. So at the end of the day, every parent wants what is best for their child. And stem cell banking is not just about the present. This is actually an investment in your child's future. And when it comes to a baby, preparation is everything. And if we can do something to ensure a healthy future for them, maybe it's not even a case of, is it worth it? It's simply a no-brainer. If you carried on watching this video without watching the first one, you will find it right here. And in the description below, I will include the link to a short video from NetCells explaining exactly what happens when they take these stem cells at birth.